Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Beis, Daf 102 of cnt'd Pesachim. The first Amud really begins by finishing off the cliffhanger question that we asked yesterday, which is based on machlokas between Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshes. When you have people who are eating things that you would have to make a bracha in a bracha achrona in the original place. The Rashbam says that that's even things like things that require ala michya, a bracha mein shalosh, like pizza. If you're eating pizza and then you go to your friend's house, you have to make another bracha rishona, since you're going to have to come back anyways to make an ala michya, assuming that that's the halacha. So Rav Chisda says that if you eat something that you would have to come back to where you ate it in order to make a bracha achrona, so then you don't have to make a new bracha. Rav Sheshes says, no, even in such a case, if you go to a different place, you'd have to make a new bracha. So we're going to continue with that machlokas. And then, for the second half of the page, we talk about what happens if you're eating with your friends, you're hanging out with your friends and having a meal on Erev Shabbos, and it becomes Shabbos, kind of looping back into the machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Chisda and Rabbi Yossi that we saw the other day. And then some interesting things at the end there in terms of order of Havdalah in Osim Mitzvos Chavilos, interesting sugyas. So, to begin with, as I referenced a minute ago, yesterday at the end we saw machlokas between Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshes, that if you're eating something, I think, let's just use bread as an example, I think, because it's probably just a more globally accepted item, I think. So let's say you're taka eating bread, okay? You're eating a meal, you ate bread, and there's a chas and kala coming by, so you went out to join the procession. So, according to Rav Chisda, look, when you come back, you don't have to, you can just keep on eating. Or, what if it wasn't a chas and kala? What if you just push it, went to your friend's house? It was Purim, you were going around from house to house. So, Rav Chisda's opinion is that since bread, or since whatever you're eating is something that you're going to have to come back to the original location in order to make a bracha achrona, so therefore you don't need to bench before you leave your house, and you don't need to make a bracha rishona when you get to your friend's house. Rav Sheshes disagrees, and he says that you do have to make a bracha. Even though you're going to have to come back to your original place, even though you're eating something that you would have to go back to your original place to make a bracha achrona, still, before you leave your house, make a bracha achrona. When you get to your friend's house, make a new bracha rishona. We asked the kasha in Rav Chisda that we had a brisa that says that if you have people who were kovei suda and a chos and kala come by and they want to go join the procession, so here's the thing. If there are people still at the house, they mentioned the zakin v'chole, an older person or a sick person, who they leave at the house so that they can go have fun. So then when they leave, they don't need to make a bracha achrona before they go, and when they come back, they don't need to make a new bracha rishona. However, the implication being that if they wouldn't have left anybody in the house, if they mamish all piled out of the house, so then you would have to make a new bracha achrona, and you would have to make a bracha achrona before you leave, and a new bracha rishona when you come back. So it seems like a kasha on Rav Chisda, who says that simply if you're eating something, that you're going to have to come back to make a bracha achrona, so then you don't have to worry about Shinui makom. But this brisa seems to be saying that you sure do. Only in a case where somebody stayed back, do you not have to worry about making brachas. But if that's not the case, so then you have to be concerned about Shinui makom. So that's the kasha against Rav Chisda, to which Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak answers, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Mantana Akiris, Rabbi Yehuda. Hold your horses, says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. It's what he says. He says, hold your horses. That opinion in that brisa, which says that you had to leave somebody at home in order to not have to bench and make a new bracha when you come back, it's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Obviously, we know here at Babylon Talmud, Yochid v'Rab Malacha Kirabim, that when you have machlokas between one opinion and the chacham, we're going to pass like the chachamim. So, good news for Rav Chisda, this opinion in this brisa was specifically Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The Chacham would argue and say that even if nobody stayed at home, you would not have to make a bracha achrona before you leave, nor a bracha rishona, new bracha rishona when you get back, since this is something that you're going to have to come back to your original place to make a bracha achrona on. Titania, as we learn in the brisa, Chaverim Shei Mesubin, you have some friends who were leaning, i.e., they're having a meal. It's the Shabbos Mincha thing. What, you guys a fan of the early Shabbos Mincha? Alright, whatever it is. There's this concept that in the middle of your Suda, you stop and you go daven Mincha and you come back. Well, if you're finished, so then you just bench because you're finished. But if you're not yet finished, so you say, you know what, let's go to shul, daven Mincha, and we'll come back afterwards. So, what do you do in terms of the bracha achra, in terms of benching and all those inyanim? So again, the Tani Chavim Shay Mesubin, so you have these friends who were hanging out and they were eating. And in the middle of the Suda, they went to go to shul or to the Beis HaMedrash. So, when they leave to go to shul, they do not need a bench, and when they come back, they don't need to make a new bracha achrona. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda, when is this? That's only if they left some of the Chevra Dartin. Not everybody wanted to go to early mincha. I'm not going to tell you which camp I fit into, Dartin. Hakoponim, some people stayed at home. And because some people stayed at home, that's why when they leave they don't need a bench, and when they come back they don't need to make a new bracha achrona. Aval. But says Rabbi Yehuda, if they didn't leave anybody over there, Pashut, everybody went to shul or to the Beis HaMedrash, so then when they leave, they would have to make a bracha achrona, and when they come back, they would have to make a new bracha rishona. Okay, and as Rashbam points out, we saw a very beautiful thing in Masechta Eruvin. In the Rashbam, it's the third one on the page, at the end of the Rashbam, and then that thing called makom shamar Rabbi Yehuda b'ameh la'achlok imasu lefayish tevi chacham bada. Whenever Rabbi Yehuda says b'ameh, such as like he says over here, b'ameh dvar mamurim, he's come to argue on the chacham. So we see that it's taka machlokas between the chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda. So the chachamim would say that you don't need anybody to stay at home, and therefore, if it's something that you're going to have to come back to your original location to make a bracha achrona, so you don't need to bench when you leave or make a bracha rishona when you come back. Seems like exactly what Rav Chizda can hope for in a brisa. Okay, so now frek the Gemara kasha. So now the Gemara is pointing out that according to the Chachamim, the reason why they don't need to make a bracha achrona when they leave, nor a bracha rishona when they come back, is because it was a situation where they're going to have to come back anyways to make a bracha achrona, and therefore it's considered like all one kvius, no hesach hadas or anything like that. However, things that you don't make a bracha acharein mimkomen, such as you pashut eating ice cream, so you don't have to come back to make a brain of fashos. Well then, afilu l'Rabbanon, then even according to the rabbis, when you leave, you're going to have to make a brain of fashos on the ice cream, and if you come back, you're going to have to make a new bracha if you decide that you want to drink a beer. Okay. Lema tavitu to Rabbi Yochanan. Well, that's it. That's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Who could remind me what Rabbi Yochanan says? Rabbi Yochanan said yesterday that Shinui makom is not an Indian. Ki'ilu, if I eat ice cream at my house and then I go to your house and you feed me ice cream, thank you. So says Rabbi Yochanan, I don't need to make a new bracha rishona. Why? Because what's the big deal? What, I change places? Not a big deal. There's no hesach hadas. Anyways, but let's say it is a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan, because over here we're saying that it actually depends. Something like ice cream, where you don't have to davka make a bracha achrona b'mkomo. So we have a brisa that's saying that taka you'd have to make a new bracha. But didn't we already ask a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan one time already? Yesterday at the top of Kuf Aleph Mud Beis, we quoted a brisa which says explicitly that Shinui makom you'd have to make a new bracha. So I already asked a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan from a brisa. How come we need to ask from this one too? Well, Nema me'onami tavi tufta. Let's say, well, from this one, it's also a kasha on him, so it's a second one. And as Rashbam points out, Kilu, even if you would somehow figure out how to solve the first brisa, then you're still going to have to figure out what to do about this brisa. Amalach Rabbi Yochanan, to which the Gemara says, no, Rabbi Yochanan can defend himself against the question from this brisa, Hu adin da'afilu dvarim she'ein tunim bracha la'achrein b'mkomon nami. Ein tzrichen levarich. That Rabbi Yochanan can answer, don't make the diuk that you made. What does it say in the brisa? The brisa is talking about when they were eating something that they would have to come back anyways and make a bracha achrona. And then in the middle they went up to go to shul. Right? It was their Shabbos Suda, they washed, they had a whole Suda. They were going to have to come back to bench anyways. And then they went to shul and we're saying that according to the Chachamim, they don't have to bench before they leave, they don't have to make a new bracha when they come back. We wanted to imply that means that if it was just ice cream, then they would have to make brachas. Says Rabbi Yochanan, that's not really true. Actually, even if it was just ice cream, they would not need to make a bracha achrona before they leave and a new bracha rishona when they come back. Right? Again, so then how come the Brisa talks about akra agleim, that they like uprooted their feet, meaning implying that it was davka a kavua meal, something that they were going to have to come back to make a bracha achrona. That's just to show you to what extreme Rabbi Yehuda goes in his opinion. That even when it comes to things that you're going to have to come back anyways to make a bracha achrona where you ate them, nonetheless, the only reason why, says Rabbi Yehuda, you would not need to make a bracha achrona before you leave and a bracha rishona before you come back, it's because you left people in the house. But if you didn't leave anybody at the house, i.e. everybody left, well then, says Rabbi Yehuda, you would have to make a bracha achrona before you leave and a bracha rishona when you come back. So it says Rabbi Yochanan, this brisa is not necessarily a proof against me, because I can make the argument that according to the Chachamim, you never need to make a bracha achrona before you leave and a bracha rishona when you come back, vis-a-vis in terms of Shinui makom. The only reason why you're davka talking about something that you have to make a bracha achrona and it's the same place is to teach you to what extreme Rabbi Yehuda goes, to say that still you would only be able to get away without making the brachas if you left people at home. Tanigava said to Rav Chizda, we have a brisa that's explicitly supporting Rav Chizda. You have some friends who were drinking wine together. Now wine is clearly something that you have to make a special bracha afterwards. A bracha mein shalosh, ala gefen, v'aglein v'chazru, ein tzrichen levarich, and they went somewhere else and they came back. They don't need to make a new bracha. So there you have it. Things that you need to make a bracha in their own place, you don't need to make a bracha achrona before you leave, nor a bracha rishona when you come back, just like Rav Chizda. Tana Rabbanon, the rabbis taught b'nei chabur shay musubin. Okay, so if you have also some friends, they were, hanging out, having a barbecue, v'kiddush alei anayom, and now Shabbos, it's mamash right before Shabbos, and now, lo and behold, it becomes Shabbos. Mevin lo kos shel yain, so you bring him a glass of wine. V'omer olav kedushas hayom, v'sheni omer olav perkas hamozim de Rabbi Yehuda. So what you'll do is you'll bring 2 cups of wine. The first one he makes kiddush, and the second one he's going to bench. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Because remember, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, right? We had machlokas between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. It's the same machlokas here. Rabbi Yehuda says that mafsikin, that when Shabbos comes in, you have to stop your Suda, even if you had started it before Samuch L'Mincha, Kilu, when you were allowed to. But still, Shabbos comes, you got to stop. So we bring them 2 cups of wine, makes Kiddush, benches, done. Rabbi Yossi, Omer Ochav Olich Achetech Shach, Rabbi Yossi says, look, you can even keep on eating. It says Achetech Shach Kilu Ad V'Ad B'chlal. You can even continue eating after it gets dark. Gomru, and then whenever they finish, Kos Rishon Mevarech Olav Birkas Hamazon V'Asheni Omer Olav Kedushas Hayom, and then whenever they finish eating, so they'll bring 2 cups of wine. That could be at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 at night, whatever it is. They'll bring them 2 cups of wine. He'll bench on the first one, and then finally make Kiddush on the second cup of wine. How come we need to have 2 cups of wine? Bring 1 cup of wine. Feed 2 birds with 1 seed. Bring 1 cup of wine, and use that cup for Kiddush and for benching. Amr Rav Huna, Amr Rav Sheshis. Interesting. Why Rav Huna for some reason is quoting Rav Sheshis? Why would Rav Huna be quoting Rav Sheshis? I don't know. Rav Huna says the name of Rav Sheshis in Om Shtei Kedushas Al Kos Echad. We don't do that. We don't use 1 glass of wine for 2 different mitzvahs, for benching and Kiddush. My time, why? Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak L'fi She'ein Osem Mitzvahs Chavilos says Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, because we don't bundle together mitzvahs. That's not what we do. As the Rashbam says, it looks like a burden. We don't necessarily want to just, let's just feed 2 birds with 1 seed. Let's just chop 1 glass of wine and we'll just do everything with 1 glass of wine. Get everything out of the way quickly. We don't want that. Rather, bring 1 glass of wine, we'll use that for Kiddush. Bring another glass of wine, we'll use it for benching in whatever order they're supposed to be. But we don't want to just, try to get as many things out of the way with as little as possible when it comes to mitzvahs. Vilo? Wait, but is that really true? Is it really true that we don't make 2 kiddushos on 1 glass of wine? We learn in a brayso. Oh, it's a Mishnah we saw in Masech the Brachas. Somebody who comes home on Motzoi Shabbos, mevarich al yain. So first he makes a bracha on wine, boi priagafen, vala ma'or, and then boi me'or ya'esh, vala besamim. He says boi mine besamim, va'achar kach omer avdallah, and then he says avdallah. Skip the next 2 words. And if he only has 1 glass of wine, so then he just waits until after he's done eating shal shudas, and then he puts them all together. He'll just use that 1 glass for benching and for avdallah. Oh, so what do we see? So we see that in an event where a fellow only has 1 glass of wine, he can use that 1 glass of wine for benching and for havdalah. So what do we see? Apparently you can use 1 glass of wine for multiple things. Ein lo shiny. The Gemara says, that's not a proof. He didn't have any more wine, as it explicitly says. That in a situation where he doesn't have 2 glasses of wine, all he has is 1, so then he can put them all together. What can you do? But in a place where, here these people are eating on Erev Shabbos, they're having a barbecue, Lord knows they have tons of wine. So then bring 2 glasses of wine and use 1 for Kiddush and 1 for benching. Don't bunch them together. Weiter. But what about when Yom Tov falls out after Shabbos? Yom Tov is a Sunday. Okay? The Islay, that of course he has wine, and as Rashbam points out that we're assuming right now that it's Seder night, so obviously he has wine. We even said, even Ani Shabi Yisrael needs to make sure, in Pochasin, right, Lo Yivchsulo Midalat Amos, right, Vafil Min Atamchu, right? So, everyone's going to have wine on Pesach night. Okay. So what if Seder night is a Motzoi Shabbos? the Islay, where he certainly has wine, V'amar Rav Yakne. And Rav says, what's the order? Yakne. What does Yakne mean? Yain, Kiddush, Ner Havdalah. So we see that on one glass of wine, you're saying Kiddush and Havdalah. And there's plenty of wine. So the Gemara points out, well, if you look into what Rav says, it says Yakne. If anybody's ever heard of Yakne Haz, that's what we're getting up to. Really, tomorrow we're going to get up to it more. But actually right here, it comes up already. That it's talking about the order of the brachas for Kiddush / Havdalah when Sunday is Yom Tov. So from the fact that Rav doesn't mention anything about Zman, he doesn't say anything about Shechianu, so then clearly it's not Seder night. From the fact that we are not saying Shechianu, then clearly it's not Seder night. It must be that we're talking about the last day of Pesach. That any wine that he had, he's already drank, and now he doesn't have any wine, and because he doesn't have any wine, that is why he is doing both Havdalah and Kiddush on the same glass of wine. But one second, what about even on the first day of Pesach, where you have plenty of wine? But one second, but even Seder night, Lemaise, even Seder night, what's the order? Abaye says Yekazne, which is Yayin, Kiddush, right? Boi Piagafen, then Kiddush, then Shechianu, then Boi Moria Eish, and then Havdalah. And Rava says Yaknehaz, okay, different order. But we see there that you're making Havdalah and Kiddush on the same glass of wine, even though you have plenty of wine. Havdalah v'Kiddush chad milsei, because Hamazim v'Kiddush 3 million inu. Rather, Havdalah and Kiddush are chad milsei, which is very interesting. But basically, both are coming to delineate Yom Tov and Shabbos, right? Right, holy days, right? And as Rashbam points out, even in Havdalah, when it's Shabbos going into Yom Tov, he's going to say Amadam mi Kodesh LeKodesh, between one holy day and another holy day. So therefore, because both Havdalah and Kiddush are coming, how does the Rashbam says? He says it in a very good way. Tavai mishum kedushas Yom Tov ninu. They're both coming because of the kedusha of Yom Tov, both the Kiddush and the Havdalah, and therefore you can make both of them on one glass of wine. Whereas benching and Kiddush are really two separate things. Therefore, you're going to need two separate glasses of wine because ein osim mitzvos chavilos. However, Kiddush and Havdalah you can make on the same glass of wine. That would be acceptable. Well, friends, that was Daf Kuf Beis of Masechta Pesachim, Daf 102. So what did we discuss today? So within the context of our machlokas between Rav Chizda and Rav Sheshes about do you need to make a bracha acharona before you leave and a bracha rishona when you come back, when you're eating something that you're going to have to come back to anyways to make a bracha acharona. So we saw a machlokas between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda about this. And they say, look, when it comes to something that you're going to have to make a bracha acharona in the place where you ate it, so the Chachamim say that when you leave the house, you don't need a bench, and when you come back, you don't need to make a new bracha, because you're going to be coming back anyways to make a bracha. And there's no Hesach Hadas. Rabbi Yehuda argues and he says, only if you left people in the house. If you left people in the house, then you don't have to make a bracha acharona before you leave and a bracha rishona when you come back. If you didn't leave anybody in the house, you're going to have to make brachas. Now, when it comes to things that you do not need to come back to, where you ate them in order to make a bracha acharona, such as ice cream, so then when you leave, you would have to make a bracha acharona, and when you come back, you would have to make a new bracha rishona. Rabbi Yochanan, of course, could argue on that, because he says that there's no such thing as Shinui makom. Okay, fine. And then we got into questions about when you're eating and having a barbecue on Erev Shabbos, going into Shabbos. So when Shabbos begins, Rabbi Yehuda says, look, Of course, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is mafsikin, you have to stop. So we bring you 2 glasses of wine, you first make kiddush, and then you bench. Rabbi Yossi says, look, you can continue eating even past dark, however late you want. Whenever you're done, get 2 glasses of wine, bench, and then make kiddush. We then asked, why do you need 2 glasses of wine? So we said, because we don't want to bundle together mitzvahs. Enos mitzvahs chavilas. Alright, friends, that was Daf Kuf Chof. No, it wasn't. That was Daf Kuf Beis. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out.